August 15th, 2002. A garage door stands open in the early morning light. On the couch lies Michael Short, not sleeping but dead, a single bullet hole in his head. Inside the house, his wife Mary, also shot execution style in her bed. And their 9-year-old daughter Jennifer, gone. Vanished without a trace. What unfolded next would become the largest criminal investigation the county had ever seen. A mystery that 22 years later remains completely unsolved. If you're drawn to true crime mysteries that haunt investigators and families alike, hit that subscribe button right now. Like this video and drop a comment with your theories, because this case needs every set of eyes it can get. This is a story about a family destroyed, a community shattered, and questions that refuse to die. Let's dive in. The Short family seemed ordinary in every way that mattered. Michael Short ran a mobile home moving business in Oak Level, Virginia. Honest work, long hours, the kind of life built on calloused hands and straightforward dealings. His wife Mary was a devoted mother, and Jennifer, their 9-year-old daughter, was just beginning to discover who she might become. They were a family doing what families do, living, working, planning for tomorrow. Chris Thompson knew the Shorts well. He worked for Michael, and on the evening of August 14th, 2002, he'd been at their house late into the night, helping Michael work on a vehicle. It was normal. Michael was the kind of guy who'd work until the job was done, no matter what the clock said. They'd made plans to meet early the next morning, just before 9 a.m., to drive to nearby Christiansburg to pick up a truck for the business. When Chris arrived that morning, nothing seemed immediately wrong. The garage door was open. Michael was on the couch where he often slept. His snoring sometimes kept Mary awake, so he'd taken to sleeping out there. It was a small kindness, the type of consideration that reveals character. But Michael wasn't snoring that morning. He would never snore again. Chris found him there, on that couch, a single gunshot wound to the head. The garage, usually filled with the smell of oil and metal, now held something darker. The silence was absolute, the kind of silence that screams. Inside the house, the horror deepened. Mary Short lay in her bed, also shot once in the head with what investigators would determine was a small-caliber weapon. The evidence painted a chilling picture. Both victims had been killed in their sleep. Neither had struggled, neither had fought back. They never knew their executioner was there, moving through their home like a shadow, ending their lives with cold precision. The Short family seemed ordinary in every way that mattered. Michael Short ran a mobile home moving business in Oak Level, Virginia. Honest work, long hours, the kind of life built on calloused hands and straightforward dealings. His wife Mary was a devoted mother, and Jennifer, their 9-year-old daughter, was just beginning to discover who she might become. They were a family doing what families do, living, working, planning for tomorrow. Chris Thompson knew the Shorts well. He worked for Michael, and on the evening of August 14th, 2002, he'd been at their house late into the night, helping Michael work on a vehicle. It was normal. Michael was the kind of guy who'd work until the job was done, no matter what the clock said. They'd made plans to meet early the next morning, just before 9 a.m., to drive to nearby Christiansburg to pick up a truck for the business. When Chris arrived that morning, nothing seemed immediately wrong. The garage door was open. Michael was on the couch where he often slept. His snoring sometimes kept Mary awake, so he'd taken to sleeping out there. It was a small kindness, the type of consideration that reveals character. But Michael wasn't snoring that morning. He would never snore again. Chris found him there, on that couch, a single gunshot wound to the head. The garage, usually filled with the smell of oil and metal, now held something darker. The silence was absolute, the kind of silence that screams. Inside the house, the horror deepened. Mary Short lay in her bed, also shot once in the head with what investigators would determine was a small-caliber weapon. The evidence painted a chilling picture. Both victims had been killed in their sleep. Neither had struggled, neither had fought back. They never knew their executioner was there, moving through their home like a shadow, ending their lives with cold precision. But the most terrifying discovery wasn't what investigators found, it was what they didn't find. Jennifer Short, 9 years old, was gone. Her bed was empty. Her belongings were there, but she wasn't. Had she escaped? Had she hidden somewhere in the surrounding woods, terrified and alone? Or had something far worse happened? Chris Thompson called the police, and within hours, the quiet community of Oak Level was transformed into the epicenter of a massive investigation. For 2 weeks, law enforcement combed through the Short family home, collecting hundreds of pieces of evidence, fibers, shell casings, anything that might provide a clue to who had done this and why. Simultaneously, a desperate search was underway for Jennifer. Volunteers flooded in from across the region. Search dogs crisscrossed the woods surrounding the property. ATVs rumbled through trails and back roads. A helicopter circled overhead, its searchlight cutting through the darkness. Amber alerts flashed across television screens and highway signs for hundreds of miles in every direction. The community prayed for a miracle, that Jennifer had somehow escaped, that she was lost but alive, waiting to be found. But as days turned into weeks, hope began to erode like soil in heavy rain. 6 weeks passed, 6 weeks of searching, investigating, following leads that went nowhere. And then, about 35 miles south of the Short family home, something was found. Eddie Albert's dogs had brought him what he initially dismissed as a piece of a wig, odd but not immediately alarming. 2 days later, the dogs returned with something else, something that made Albert's blood run cold. A piece of skull. He called the police immediately. Authorities began a methodical sweep of the area around Albert's property. What they found scattered across the landscape was the stuff of nightmares. Teeth, bone fragments, a small rib cage dumped beneath a nearby bridge, remains spread along a rural road. The body had been there for weeks, exposed to the elements, to animals, to decomposition. The medical could determine very little about what Jennifer had endured after her abduction, but one thing was horrifyingly clear from the skull fragments they recovered. She had been killed the same way as her parents, a single gunshot to the head from a small caliber weapon. Sheriff H.F. Cassell stood before the press, his face etched with exhaustion and grief. "She's gone now," he said, his voice heavy. "She's safe now, and no evil can befall her." It was the kind of statement that offers no comfort, only the grim acknowledgement that death had at least ended Jennifer's suffering. But knowing Jennifer's fate brought investigators no closer to understanding why. The Short family murders presented a baffling collection of contradictions. Robbery appeared to be ruled out. Nothing of significant value had been taken from the home. Yet the crime was clearly premeditated. Someone had cut the phone lines before entering. Someone had planned this. Was Jennifer the target all along? Had her parents been killed simply because they were in the way? But if so, why take her from the home only to kill her weeks later and dump her remains in a place where they'd eventually be discovered? The questions multiplied faster than the answers. Tips poured in from across the country, from Virginia, from North Carolina, from as far away as Missouri. Investigators followed every lead, but each trail seemed to end in frustration. Early in the investigation, attention focused intensely on a man named Garrison Bowman, a 66-year-old carpenter who allegedly had a grudge against Michael Short. The day after the murders, Bowman had left for Canada, a detail that immediately raised red flags for investigators. By November, Bowman had been extradited from Canada, where he'd been held on charges of drunk driving and violating immigration laws. He appeared before a grand jury in Roanoke, Virginia. The community watched, waiting for justice. But no indictment came. For years, Bowman remained under a cloud of suspicion, his name synonymous with the case in many people's minds. Then, in 2007, the police made a stunning admission. Garrison Bowman was no longer a suspect. What had happened? The investigation had been derailed by deception. 3 men, motivated by the substantial reward money offered in connection with the crime, had fabricated evidence and testimony pointing to Bowman. They'd lied to law enforcement, committed perjury, and sent the investigation careering down a false path. All 3 were eventually convicted and sentenced to several years in prison for their crimes. But the damage was done. Thousands of investigative hours had been spent pursuing a man who had nothing to do with the murders. The real killer had been given time to cover tracks, time to disappear, time to become a ghost. Would investigators have had better luck if they hadn't been led astray? It's impossible to know. What is certain is that more than 2 decades later, the person who executed Michael and Mary Short in their sleep, who abducted their daughter and killed her before discarding her remains like trash, that person remains unknown, unnamed, unpunished. The case has gone cold, but it has not been forgotten.
Every year since the murders, neighbors and friends of the Short family organize a motorcycle ride. Dozens of riders rumble through the Virginia countryside, their route deliberately crossing the bridge beneath which some of Jennifer's remains were discovered. That bridge now bears a different name, the Jennifer Renee Short Memorial Bridge. According to the sheriff's office, each time the ride takes place, new information about the case comes in. People remember something they saw, something that seemed insignificant at the time. But so far, none of it has led to an arrest. In 2003, just months after the Short family was murdered, their house was sold at auction. For most of the following years, it stood vacant, a monument to tragedy, a place people avoided, heavy with the weight of what had happened within its walls. Then, in 2019, the house burned down under mysterious circumstances. Was the fire accidental, or did someone, perhaps the killer, nearly 20 years later to destroy whatever evidence might have remained hidden in that structure? The idea seems almost paranoid, but in a case this bizarre, this brutal, this utterly unsolved, nothing can be dismissed entirely. The Short family murders remind us that some questions refuse to be answered, some wounds refuse to heal. 3 lives were taken with cold calculation, a community was shattered, and somewhere, someone knows what happened, someone knows why. The question is whether they'll ever speak. If this case affected you, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into unsolved mysteries. Drop a comment with your theories. Who do you think did this and why? Share this video. Someone out there might know something. Someone might remember. And maybe, just maybe, justice for Michael, Mary, and Jennifer Short is still possible. Thanks for watching. Until next time.